and I'm here on what should be a happy occasion, the 57th anniversary of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. But it turns out that this is a worse day than it was in 1963, because in 1963, we were making progress on, I don't even know, I hate the term race relations, because that sounds, I don't know, it sounds just like it's not a real relationship, you know, like people aren't actually together and relating to each other. It sounds like a construct. But I'm here today with 4 people that I respect and that I like. And we're just gonna talk about the March on Washington, where we are today, and how we can move forward in a positive manner, and also how important it is to win this election.
Thank you.
In November. First with me is Deandra. She is my chapter chair in Wiesbaden, Germany. Hi, Deandra, welcome.
Hi, Angela. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Next, we have Tyler Kofeld. He is a person that I have also grown to admire. He was a Sanders delegate for the DNC this year, the convention. Welcome, Tyler.
Hello.
And another person who I've just really gotten to know over the past few months, and I'm so glad that I know you, Heather Stone. She's the chair of DA Israel. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me here. Pleasure.
Okay. That was weird. Someone's trying to call me. I guess I should turn my phone off. And last but not least, another person who I've sort of just gotten to know very recently, Sue Ockness. She's the co-chair of the Progressive Caucus. And thank you so much for joining me, Sue.
Hi, happy to be here. I'm in the Toronto area in Canada.
Yes, what a shame we didn't get to go there and be there in person, but maybe some other time we'll make it to Toronto. So you guys, it is the 57th anniversary of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. I'm gonna start off with Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech. So I'm gonna share that on the screen if you just give me a second. Okay. 1 second. Always technical difficulties. Everything is always, I don't have a producer or something, you know, like that would be awesome if I did. So if anybody is interested in producing my DA Discusses, just contact me at blackcaucus@democratsabroad.org. All right, let us hear the speech, the most famous speech in America.
Pleasure to present to you Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. Five score years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, The life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted. And every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day with all of God's children be able to sing with new meaning, my country, tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghanies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when they happen, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants Protestants and Catholics will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at.
Well, all right. So it's 57 years after that. Where do you think we are right now in this, as far as everyone being free and not being judged by the color of their skin? Does anyone care to comment?
Yeah, I wrote, oh, I guess I'll jump in. I wrote down a few notes watching that speech. I don't know the last time I watched this, probably in middle school or something, the last time I watched the whole thing. But the last note I wrote was, be free one day. And all I wrote was, when is that day? Because it's not now. It hasn't happened yet. So yeah, I don't think we're there yet. Nowhere near.
Yeah.
And when I think about the actions that we've taken since then, I mean, I feel like that's one of the last really big actions that we've taken that did eventually result in the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act, like 5 years later, I think. What else is needed to free us, if you will? I think it's time for another march, to be honest. I think it's time for another big demonstration, because obviously these protests that have been happening since the 90s, and maybe even, of course, probably before then, aren't doing much. They're just creating vacuums where you get presidents like Reagan and, good God, I hope not, you know, a re-election of Trump. So
The thing that jumped out at me was how the foundation of the work, the way he framed it, was that it was faith. And that right now, a lot of us kind of don't have much faith or belief that things are going to really change. But I think the role of faith. So faith is like believing in something that you don't have any proof that it's smart to believe in, right? Like that's what faith is. I mean, that's one way of defining it anyway. So I wrote down in big letters, faith, on my piece of paper.
I think that this is the struggle that has been going on for literally centuries, and we have gone through periods of time where we have made great strides, and we have gone through periods where we have moved backwards, and we've gone through some periods where we have made small progress. And I think that we are on the cusp right now of a period where we could be making great progress, making great strides, perhaps, but in a very different way than has ever been done before. But the last time that we made great progress was really 57 years ago, 57, 55, 50 years ago, with the civil rights movement. But really, before that, it was the Civil War and the period of Reconstruction. So we should not be surprised that it takes these huge gaps in time to see big movement. And yet we should not overlook the things that have happened in between. There have been things that have changed, that have happened, that have made the life better, that have improved things. They haven't done enough. We have a long way to go. But in terms of making great strides, We're on the cusp of it right now. And I think that we can be encouraged by some of the last words of John Lewis before he passed away, in what he saw in us with the Black Lives Matter movement. So I think that that's something that we can look inside of ourselves and be encouraged that that there may be something to look forward to.
To say something really quick, there's someone on Facebook on the Democrats Abroad global page named Michael Van Slyke. He is a troll, but his trolls are that somehow the Democrats are the ones that are judging people by their skin color. So just as an FYI, Michael, first, number one, I'm not feeling you today. So I'm going to delete your comments and probably ban you from this page. Number two, I am a Black person and no one in this panel, I believe, is judging me by my color of my skin. Only some person who's sitting on the internet with nothing else to do but critique other people's work is judgmental. So bye-bye, so long, don't come back. I really will just ban you in just a second. Just stand by. So I'm so tired of all these hateful people. There's so many hateful people out there just propagating hate. This day has kind of gotten me a little bit broken. I was really involved with this effort to get out the vote for Americans in Africa for this week. So honestly, I haven't paid so much attention to the news. You know, I've been really wanting to, you know, it's important that we get as many people as possible. So yesterday night and today, I had a chance to really kind of dive into what happened in Kenosha and the ongoing issues in Kenosha. And it just made me think that maybe we haven't made as much progress as possible, and that we need to start early educating people. Like, we've never actually tried to eliminate racism. We've always just said, oh, well, you can't change people's hearts, you know, oh, so we don't do anything. We don't teach children anything. We should start early teaching children that we're all equal and that nobody is better than the other one, you know, like to the point where you can just shoot them and kill them because you feel like it. Like, we've never actually tried to stop to teach children. You know, we've sort of went around the edges with it, you know, but we never actually did it. And it just seems to me that in order to actually make change, we're going to have to do a lot to make change. I kind of watched that video where the policeman shot Jacob Blake. Jacob Blake. Yeah.
Blake.
I'm sorry, there's just so many people that have been shot by the police. It's hard for me to remember all their names. And I'm not even being facetious. Like, it keeps happening, you know? Like, it just keeps happening. Day in, every day, somebody is shot by the police, or in the case of what happened in Kenosha, a helpful vigilante is always there to shoot someone. And this is wrong. Have you guys been watching this situation or reading anything about it in Kenosha? Do you have any comment on it?
Personally, being in Poland and being away from my people, if you will, I know my mental health, and I don't have the support network that I need to constantly be dealing with these stuff in addition to just my day-to-day life. But I do try and keep updated, so I kind of know what's happening. So I don't watch videos, but you know, I'm on Facebook, and so I will see when different names and stuff they trend. And to touch on your earlier point of education, you're right, we've never tried before. And again, watching that video, the March on Washington, I have to wonder, I mentioned it briefly, but I truly have to wonder, is it not time for another one where we are more organized and more, not resolute, but maybe more concrete in our demands? And that could be one of our demands, yes. Demanding that racism is taught in schools, and it's taught in the same way that Germany teaches the Holocaust, right? And so teaching in a way that we try to prevent it from ever happening again. Teach it so people become tired of it. Teach it so much that people are like, I know, I get it. It's been drilled into my head for 12 years not to be racist. I understand that people are people and there's no difference on shade of color. Like that's the level of education that is needed. Not some class on ethics, not some passive kind of 6 weeks that you don't remember from 4th grade, an intense kind of education that stays with you after high school, even if you don't, go on to a trade school or something like that, something that stays with you. One thing you should remember from primary school.
Well, in my opinion, I think that the entire education system needs to be completely reworked.
Yeah.
It needs to be made entirely anti-racist. And it needs to also do a whole refocusing on history, because the way in which it teaches history is, I think, slanted in a way that doesn't teach about African American history, doesn't teach about Native American history in a way that conveys truth, but rather is colonial.
Yes, it doesn't. Our history classes don't teach anything about reality.
Yes.
The history that we receive is fairy tales. The Pilgrims came and they had a big Thanksgiving dinner with Indians, and then we missed the part about, the genocide afterwards. Like, what's for dessert? Genocide.
Exactly.
Delicious.
Exactly.
Thanks for sharing with us.
Right, and it really depends. I mean, it depends on which part of the country you come from. Is what type of dessert you get.
Yeah. Now that is true. Some people get more than others.
But yes, but I think that there needs to be a whole revamping of it, and and part of our problem, in quotes, is that we really do have a federated system that every state is different and every state is responsible for its education system, and the ability to direct this information from a top-down federal level is very difficult, but I do think it needs to be reworked in a very concentrated, intentional manner, in order to focus on history and throughout, and the way that it affects so many of our subjects, because it impacts across the board, and that it be made an anti-racist curriculum.
I think that something like a truth and reconciliation process, like part of the reparations, bill that's been proposed, that kind of process is important and would be one way that the kind of reforms in education that we're talking about could happen. And I'll say that in Canada, we had a truth and reconciliation process around the experiences, the treatment of Indigenous people here.
Mm-hmm. And
now almost every event I go to, it opens with a land acknowledgement. That's very standard. It's not just in so-called progressive organizations or climate organizations or things like school boards are doing it. Like it's very well integrated. There's some exceptions, but so I think you can't really teach anti-racism without I don't believe really acknowledging what's happening. So for years we've all been told girls can do everything boys can do, But if you don't say that people are treating girls differently, right, and that things aren't fair, I think it's the same with racism. If we say, I mean, it's just like saying all lives matter, right? Say all lives matter. What are you saying, really, right? You have to say people are seeing white people. This is, let's be clear, this is a white people problem, right? White people are seeing Black people as less, as different. You have to name that. You have to say it. And for whatever reason, you know, a lot of people feel like they want to protect their kids from that, or they don't want them to know, but
that's a privilege in itself. I have to
It
say,
is.
like, just to say,
right.
yeah, I don't want my kids to have to see the dirty realities of what racism really is and
Right.
how that could actually impact someone, a real human being that doesn't necessarily have the same skin color as them. How could that actually hurt them?
That's right.
Right.
And the words that come out of everyone's mouth, how those words can in turn then impact someone. And that's always the question here in Germany. I mean, Germany is a very progressive in of sorts. But as Angela mentioned earlier, in Ingelheim, where she's living, there's been like neo-Nazi protests and demonstrations going on and things like this. And, you know, it is everywhere for sure. But to bring it back to what Angela was asking, yeah, it's definitely hard being away from the United States and then reading the news and seeing all of these disturbing things that are happening. Yet again, another African-American has been shot by the police in broad daylight with witnesses, and there still hasn't been any charges brought up. This is infuriating, actually, seeing these kinds of things. And it is definitely a question of education, like as Heather said, anti-racism, anti-racist courses, and this has to start at school. I think this has to be it has to be integrated in our education system. Also, these are all things that I think we have to implement, and everybody has to participate. Otherwise, I don't know how else we can move forward. I mentioned before we went live that I've been reading Ibrahim Kendi's books, and you know, I think that I'm a woke person. I am biracial, and I live and I see both sides of this every day. But it is also something that's internalized as well. Racism, I can say that I have prejudices, and I can also say that I have participated in the assimilationist culture, is what or a type of person is what he says. And I'm like, I have participated in these kinds of things. And to recognize it and to accept it and say, you know what, I want to push back against that now. And I really want to work towards an anti-racist perspective and the way I treat other people. And treating everybody on an individual basis. Yeah, but that comes through education, and that comes through, you know, my own desire to become a better person and to really, yeah, how can I change the way I see the world and how I see myself in this world? Yeah, so I think it's so many different things in one, and you all have, you know, said very similar things as well. So it also has to come from within. And I don't know. I think also a structural kind of thing, but then I think also if you're curious, if you think, hey, maybe I've said something racist before, you know, then you did most likely, you know, like, and also I think taking a step back from saying like, hey, you're a racist, and not being so offended. Like, you should be offended and you should be aware that you've said something that has offended somebody, but it doesn't mean that you can't change your perspective and like, don't become defensive, but instead like try to take whatever the person that called you that, maybe try to see it from a different perspective. And I think we're so defensive right now when we can't be that way anymore. I think we really have to change our reaction and our response. And it's okay to be emotional, but I think it's also like, yeah, we got to take some steps forward. So shake it off, read a book, and, you know, get a hug, and I don't know.
There's no gray area anymore. And I think that's kind of what people are afraid of. Like, you're either 110% woke and marching in the protests, or you're racist. And I mean, to be frank, I kind of do see.
It's not totally wrong, you know. Like,
yeah. But I mean, to your average maybe suburbanite who's kind of like, no, I'm not racist. I have black friends. That kind. For them, I mean, they may say some racist things and not realize it, because for them, racism is the neo-Nazis marching with tiki torches. They're like, no, I'm not them. I don't associate with them. And I'm like, well, if you're not actively fighting against it, then unfortunately you're part of the problem. That goes for everybody. Yeah, whether you're
that is part of the issue. It is part of the issue, and I think it's 100% right. You know, one of the issues with the wall of moms in Seattle was that a lot of the focus turned to the wall of moms, and it became this big issue of media attention on them. You know, white suburban women out on the protest line, but was it really their protest? And they're protecting the African American protesters, but should the focus be on them? It's not really their protest, and they made it clear it's not their protest. They're there, because what was the reason that one of the women gave? Because when Floyd called for his mom, in his dying words, he called for every mom, which is true. I mean, every mom heard that. I mean, I heard that. As a mom, I also was moved, being in Israel, I can't be on the lines to, protest, but yes, it's a moving statement. You want to be there. But the question is it your fight? Are you in it because it's your fight? Or are you in it because you just want to help out? And that's the line between, are you the difference between ally and anti-racist.
Yeah, and it should be everyone's fight,
Everyone's fight. It should be everyone's fight. Exactly, Angela. Exactly.
Am I the only one? I mean, I know I'm not the only one, but God, aren't people just tired of all this nonsense? Like these sort of racist, with Trump, it's not a dog whistle, it's a bullhorn, I mean, I'm looking forward to somehow, I just feel like he's just going to get mad at Kamala, because she's a woman and she's African American, and I'm pretty sure he's going to say something very unpleasant about her.
Yeah. And then Pence is going to say something a little more subtle, like
yeah. I mean, both of them are terrible people, but it should be everyone's fight. I'm a human, you're a human. Mm-hmm. Are you just going to stand and let humans be destroyed? Is that what people are going to do because we have a different skin color? There's 3 African Americans on this panel, and we all have different skin colors. It's very clear to see. We have 2 white Americans on this call, and they have different skin colors. So what your skin color is an irrelevant. It's nothing. It doesn't mean anything. We're all human, and if we can just come to that sooner rather than later. We can't wait anymore. We can't be like, well, I think Black people are okay, but I don't want to work with them. Or Black people, I have a Black friend, but I just don't want them living in my neighborhood. Like all these terrible things. Or I see a Black man on the street and I'm going to clutch my purse, like, I mean, really, it's all, yes, you could get mugged by a Black person. You could get mugged by a white person. You could get mugged by anybody who's, has a tendency to mug you. It doesn't have something to do with their skin color.
We get mugged every day by mugged and looted every day by corporations that are taking advantage of all of us.
Yeah, white men in suits
taking advantage of Uber drivers and Lyft drivers and Amazon workers. Like, sorry,
go for it.
And
this is the
and that woman who was talking about how how the folks who were like removing items from shops, some people call it's looting, right? That you know, as Black people living where I can't remember if she was in Detroit or where she was, but living where they were, you know, like centuries of basically owning nothing, and when people did own something, it was taken away, like in Tulsa.
Yep.
So have you guys seen her? She's just amazing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't have a link, but so, you know, our fear, our white fear, you know, of a Black man on the street, is so it's the wrong direction. It's the wrong direction. It's just so completely wrong.
And you know what always gets me is that, I mean, to be honest, I identify as non-binary, but like I know I appear as a Black man, and so like that's when most people see me, and it's always so funny when they try and hide it, when they're trying like subtly kind of, you know, like shoulder their purse a different way, or sometimes they just blatantly move it to a different arm, and I'm like, I'm not even looking at you, I'm not looking at your direction, but that doesn't go unnoticed. Like, I'm not like completely unaware of my situation. It sucks because I have to be afraid for my own safety, and then also try to think about other people's perception of me as I'm just trying to walk down the street. Like, these are things that I'm sure most people, most men don't, or I will say most men don't think about when they're walking down the street. Not about their own safety, and much less about how maybe other people, women in particular, may see them as a threat. But because I'm, I don't know, woke or whatever adjective you want to use, empathetic, I have to be careful for both sides. For my own safety, I don't want, you know, especially in a country where I'm currently at, in Poland, it's not the greatest for people of color. But then again, like we were talking about, what country is there? Can I have complete and utter freedom and not feel threatened just by the color of my skin at the end of the day, or because of my, you know, ethnicity, whatever that may be?
Yeah, I think for me, I always get this.
I know what you mean.
In Germany, people always ask me where I'm from, and I'm like, oh, I'm American, and they're like, no, but where are your parents from? You know, or like if you're in the university scene, or I work in the wine industry here in Germany, and of course I'm always the only person of color, and like only person of color, and there's always way less females in the wine industry all over the world. But people are always like so surprised that an American could be so well spoken, especially like if you're a person of color. It's like, oh, but you couldn't be from the United States. And I'm like, no, I'm a proud person of African American heritage and mixed heritage, and it's always like, I don't have to hide that, but it's always an interesting thing here, because even Europeans don't have a very, I think, good view. I think they've adopted a lot of the white American viewpoints when it comes to people of color, as well. You know, it's a very similar sort of situation, whether you're in the United States or if you're in Europe, when it comes to that. So that's also, you know, it's not where I feel in danger or anything like that, not like what Ty was talking about on being on the street or anything, but it still makes you question and internalize these things. And it's like, oh, do I belong here then? Oh, they don't recognize me. It's a very uncomfortable sort of like feeling, I think. Yeah, and I can imagine that's in a lot of other industries.
Do not be afraid, I mean, of people, and you belong wherever you want to belong. Really, all these artificial boundaries that we're making around people and nations, and they're all
direction from you, boss.
It's yes, they are constructs and they're real, but they're fake and they're stupid, and we don't have to live this way anymore. You know, I don't want to live where, to be honest, I've never felt like afraid of people or that people wouldn't like me because of my race. I mean, I am sometimes should be afraid when I'm not. um, when I'm not afraid. But I'm not afraid because I'm a human, and I deserve the same human rights and consideration as anybody else. And I'm going to give you the same consideration as a human. Doesn't matter what your race or sex. It doesn't matter, because you're a human like me. And if we can just all maybe try to work on that. And I don't know, I can't remember who said it, but if you say something wrong, it's okay. Just correct it and don't do it again. Jesus Christ. This is the problem with racism, is that it's so ubiquitous in our society that people don't even know when they're saying something racist, because it's just what we always said, like, yeah. So
I think that we need to, I think we were talking before about education and starting young and starting in the schools. I really think that we need to do programming the way that Germany did, because it has to be something that separates the children and the education that the children get from what their parents learned. And we're going to have to go through a few generations of it, to the point where there will be a new societal norm of education and learning. And it's not something that's going to be quick or easy. But it's going to take a long time.
we don't have that much more time to wait.
Sorry,
but our
I
education,
don't mean to be a downer on this, but I think it's going to take time.
I'm already sad. I'm already sad, so you can't make me go down anymore.
I think. Oh, sorry,
ahead,
Angela, go ahead.
No. I just think that, yes, we need education. We need improvements in our education, but not just about race, about critical thinking too. We wouldn't be in this position right now with Donald Trump as president if people could actually think like a logical conclusion. Oh my God. I saw this meme.
Read the newspaper critically. Yes.
Or just anything, like when someone who's not a doctor tells you, well, there's a great treatment for COVID. It's like, are you a doctor? No. Do you even know science? So maybe I shouldn't listen to you. But I saw this meme today, and I don't know, maybe I should try to find it it was someone who is related to me. And they had a meme that was like, oh, maybe I can find it really. Something like Joe Biden going from Donald Trump to Joe Biden is, oh, where was it? God, I should have saved it because it was so stupid, but it was like a bad analogy. And I just was like, your analogy is really terrible, but somebody talk and I will keep, Sue, you were going to talk and I will find this really quickly.
I'll say that I think, I mean, we've sort of said this, but I feel like it's important to kind of put on the table, like that there's sort of two fronts, if you were, on this battle. There's the white supremacists, the neo-Nazis, and a lot of the police, like the police who were giving water bottles to the vigilantes, armed white militia in Kenosha, and thanking them over the loudspeaker for what they were doing. So we've got that situation, and then we have, all the folks who are, white people who, like Black people, but they clutch their purse. We sometimes, have a less respectful interaction with someone of color that we think is about the situation and about the person, and that it isn't at all influenced by the color of someone's skin, but it may be experienced as a racist exchange by the other person, and it very possibly, maybe probably, is rooted in some internalized racism in ourselves, right? So like in our society, like we're used to this idea that you treat different people differently. Like if someone's the president, you treat him a certain way. And if someone's anything else, you treat them different ways. Like we all try to figure out where we fit. Like it all happens in the background, in the hardwiring. Like we just, and so so I have a feeling that every white person needs to hear a couple of times that they've done something racist, even those who, I mean, maybe there's some really perfect, amazing, you know, direct channel to Jesus, I don't know, people like out there. But, you know, I had a kind of public confrontation with a coworker once, like out in the hallway. And I was, you know, no, we got to do it this way. And she's like, no, we got to do it this way. And later she said to me, she asked me to meet with her, and she said that I was being racist. And boy, was that ever hard. That was really hard. Thankfully, I was working in an anti-racist, anti-oppressive organization, and we were going through training, and I was on the committee. I was on the ARAO committee. So I was like, so I think I said first, I don't think so. Like, but I had to go back and think, and I had to say like, well, she says it, she's saying it. She's on the receiving end of this. Would I have that argument with my boss out in the hallway? Would I have that argument with, so I accepted that I was. But that's not something, I mean, I'm sure maybe it's obvious to everyone on the panel, but I think for a lot of white people, we would not say, you know, that kind of interaction is like there's a fundamental kind of racist thing happening there. It's just, and people also called her bitchy and pushy and difficult. And so she and I had like some really good conversations about that too, right? And what was going on there. She was a Black manager with a lot of white sort of staff. We were the organization was actually not living anti-racism, anti-oppression until this new executive director came in, and then wanted to bring it back, get them back to their roots, even though it was in the mission statement. And so there was a lot of resistance among the staff that like reported to her. Anyway, sorry, I'm talking too long, but anyway,
okay.
That's
okay, because
so that work needs to happen around if we want people to move from, like Tyler, you were saying, if you're doing nothing, you're part of the problem. Like, but honestly, okay, so I want to end with something hopeful. Like, honestly, I don't believe it's that hard. Like, if people are in a really good kind of training around this stuff, like it's really good. Like the kind of story I'm describing, like I don't think that's that hard for people to get. I think people will get it. I think it makes sense. I don't know. I believe.
Yeah. I also think that if the kids are learning it in school, they will be able to bring some of it home and teach it to their parents.
I think also it comes down to how comfortable are we about talking about race, or are we comfortable with talking about race? I think we are not comfortable about talking about
Not
race.
at all.
We're so uncomfortable. And if you ever call a white person, then they're always like, well, why does it have to? Why are you calling me a white person? But like these kinds of moments, these uncomfortable moments, and if you ever say like, then they're uncomfortable, I think, for the first time in their life. They've never had to be uncomfortable with the idea that they aren't just a person, but they're a white person, and that they might have powers or something, you know, like white privilege. It's talking about white privilege essentially, and how uncomfortable white people are when you point out white privilege, because it's not something that a lot of white people specifically don't want to necessarily say, I benefit from white privilege. I have white privilege just because of the color of my skin.
They don't want to acknowledge their white privilege.
They don't want to. And it's like, no. Okay. And then the second you point something out and they feel uncomfortable, they feel what is this feeling I have? Like this is this, like that's that's how people of color feel all the effing time, right? Like if you're in a space where you're the only person of color, you feel really uncomfortable. And then there's so many times where you hear things from different people, if you're ever in a group kind of thing, or if you're somewhere, and you just hear tons of things and you have these uncomfortable feelings. And like, when you're younger or you're maybe not as woke, you don't necessarily realize what someone said or that it was offensive. But as you become awakened, then you realize, wow, I am not okay with that. And at some point you have to speak up, and then you're that one person of color who's trying to to bring race into it, or to, like that's for me. I've had a lot of moments like that here in Germany, to be honest, where I'm the only person of color in so many different situations. And I've had really uncomfortable discussions in front of big groups of people, because I'm like, you know what? I'm too old for this. I'm 26, and I'm like, I'm too old for this, and I am not going to put up with this. I want to live in a space. I want to be around people that I feel comfortable with. And if I tell you once that I don't like what you said, you better respect me, or you can go away, and we don't have to be with one another again. And you know what? The cool thing about Germans usually is that they are like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. And then they fix it. And then they ask questions if they don't understand it. And I try to be open and try to answer questions if I feel like it. But that's the biggest thing is about, that's something that I've come to the realization with in the last 2 years, is that I don't have to feel uncomfortable. I can speak up. And if people don't want to listen to me, then you know what? They don't have to be in my zone. And if they want to stay, then they can, and we can get past that. And I think like that's where we in America have to be a little bit more, we have to take some steps to be able to talk about race, because we don't talk about race. And like coming from, a biracial background, two different parents that look different, and having the families and extended families and things like this, there's so many moments where like, like in our close family, it was something else. We could talk about race, like my mom is white and she's very woke white lady, and always is always talking about race, is always bringing it up and trying to have a discussion about it. But that's coming from her, and most people don't want to have those conversations, and they're so necessary, because it's so much, there's brings so much more benefit for everybody else, and also just to have a fucking comfortable space to be in. That's something that, is a privilege. And a lot of mental health, I know, Ty, you're talking about like, you don't have your support group. Like, I totally am right there with you. A lot of the times if you're in a big space and you're the only person of color, that is so stressful. That is so stressful sometimes, because you just, for me, it's always like this heightened sort of feeling, like that's so much extra energy that you feel like you have to, I don't know, like just be there and be yourself and be strong enough, even though you have all these extra eyes looking at you, or, it is exhausting. And then someone comes at you and says something, and then you're just like, like, so we just have to be more comfortable about talking about race, period.
To that point, oh, sorry.
I'm done. You go ahead.
I was just gonna say, to that point, I was in a similar boat as you. Like, for a while, my dad used to compliment me all the time growing up. He said, because I'm one of those people that, like, I don't care what you say about me, because I only care about people that I only care what you say if you're somebody that I care about. I'll put it that way. So if you're somebody, who I don't know, or you think you're my friend or whatever, you can say whatever you want. That doesn't faze me. My dad used to compliment me and always say, like, any insults or whatever rolled off of me like water off a duck's back. Yeah. And so when I would be in these situations and people would say these frankly racist things in junior high or high school or whatever, I'd just be like, okay, cool, whatever. And then I'd go about my business and like not think anything of it. But then it got to a point similar to you, Deandra, where I was like, I'm too damn old to be like dealing with this, to be constantly uncomfortable, or to constantly feel like I'm the one who has to walk on eggshells around people when like, no, I'm tired of being uncomfortable. Like I am making this space for me, and it's very, very similar to what you said. If you don't want to be in it, you don't have to be. Like there are 8 billion people in this world. I will find somebody else who I want to be around, who I like and want to be around. And if I bring this up to you, and it's a little bit more difficult here in Poland. In Spain, I had a great time. Whenever I'd bring up something among race, they were easily like, they wanted to learn more. They were similar to like maybe the Germans in your experience. In Poland, not so much. And I think it's mostly ignorant. So I have a little bit more patience here than as if I were like in the US. But it's constantly having to explain and maybe go into a little bit more depth of why something is racist or why something makes me uncomfortable. And that is, of course, exhausting. So I don't always take the time to do that because I mentioned, I don't have that support network to kind of support me afterwards or in that moment. And so why would I give myself that extra stress, that extra anxiety? I try it in moments where somebody is genuinely wanting to learn, but when it's just if it's just somebody who's wanting to poke the bear a little bit, to be devil's advocate, I don't have the patience for that. I don't have the time, patience, none of it. And so, yeah, it's just, you're not alone, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's some of it's internalized. Sometimes it takes a while to come out of that space and really own who you are as a person.
I think just one last thing, and then we can move on. I think that's like the most uncomfortable point about what's going on right now with like Black Lives Matter and the protests, and so many people coming out and saying like, we're done. We don't want to take this anymore. And like with the NBA right now, boycotting the playoffs and saying, you know what? How about if we don't show up today? What happens? You can't make your money. And then you're upset. It's not like shut up and dribble anymore. It's just like, how about we're not going to show up anymore. And then people start to realize that we have to change something, you know, like, and we don't have to take it anymore. And I hope that our generation, millennials, that like we all speak up more about it and say, you know what, we don't have to, you know, take on these norms because it's not normal, you know, just because there's social norms and everybody is accepting them and playing along with them doesn't mean that we have to, and doesn't mean that they're right. It shouldn't be that way. And therefore we don't have to do it anymore, like, or take part in it or play the role or be silent, because we can't be silent anymore. And that's where I'm at in 2020. Like, I think you are too, Ty. Like,
yeah,
no more.
Well, to speak on what you were saying, and a little bit of what Sue had mentioned as well, I think if we are going to talk about race, if we are going to deal with this problem, there needs to be some sort of national kind of moment about it, right? Like a Truth and Reconciliation Committee. Like, because right now people are getting, you know, they're getting biased news, so you're getting it from the left or you're getting it from the right, and each one thinks they're right. And so you're not going to, unless there are very, very few people who I think are wanting to learn about the other side, who are like, maybe I don't know everything. Let's see what the other side has to say. Let's see if like there is some truth in that. And of course, speaking primarily to people who are wanting to address their internalized racism or maybe external racism, right? There has to be a Truth and Reconciliation Committee, something that is non-biased, where people are coming and saying, I'm Black and I'm a Republican and I still experience racism or whatever, just like realizing that this issue isn't a left or right issue, that it is a national issue that needs to be discussed. I remember talking to a Dutch friend here in Poland, and he kind of had the same attitude that a lot of Poles have, not to generalize, but from my experience, who was kind of like, oh, well, racism is just a US thing. It doesn't really happen here in Europe. And I was like, no, just because it's not talked about does not mean it doesn't happen. And I brought up, you know, Zwarte Piet, or I have non-existent Dutch, but when they do the blackface for Santa Claus. Yeah. And he was like, oh, well, yeah, I guess I haven't really thought about it. I'm like, yeah, exactly. Like, just because it's not talked about, just because it's not in your forefront, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Does not mean it's not offensive. And so, yeah, having this national conversation where it's out in front, where everybody can see it, everybody is on the same page, as opposed to coming from your favorite news source, whether that be Fox News or CNN or what have you. So yeah, Truth and Reconciliation Committee basically is the end of that. Is what I was trying to say is what I think is necessary for us to move forward.
100%. Yes, that is what we need to actually reconcile with the past, the way that people have been treated in general, and perhaps the ways that in specific incidences that a person has treated another person or a person has responded in a certain way. It's the only way, but I don't know if something like that could happen in America. There's so many people that racism is a part of their identity. Like, it's not just like I'm white and there's racism out there. Like, it's a part of their belief system, not right up there with religion. And so
well, it's actually intertwined with some parts of white Christianity.
Yes, that is true. That is almost, that's not the number one reason why I'm an atheist, but it's in the top 5. So just as an FYI, in case anybody didn't know, I am that elusive Black atheist. Yeah,
I was just listening to a podcast about the split in the Baptist church between the South and the North, and that they only came together after the Civil War, again, but that there really was this really that there's a history going back that they never actually reconciled their history about slavery in the evangelical church, in the Baptist and evangelical churches. So.
Well, to hear some people talk about it, like when you're talking about getting rid of statues and other like Confederate monuments and things like that, you're like, this is my history, this is my ancestry, you're getting rid of a part of me. And it's exactly what you're saying. It's the racism is literally intertwined with their sense of self. And so by calling them racist, by pointing out this behavior, you're saying that they themselves are wrong. And that's what they feel. This is what I feel like. It's my understanding. And then you put religion in there as well. And yeah, you're attacking everything that they stand for, really. By trying to stand up for yourself, you're attacking them. And it doesn't have to be that way. And so
No.
I think
Yeah. And I also think like there's echo. I think that's also a false understanding of themselves, because if you really understand the history of these Confederate statues and things like this, they're not more than like 100 years old. Like, they were put up during Jim Crow time to scare Black people. Like, they are not anything that is representative of anything other than pure racism and suppression and segregation. And if that's who you are, okay then. I mean, I think that's also just a misunderstanding of history and what these things actually represent and when they were actually put up. Because I don't think that if they were to know exactly when they were put up, I don't think they would like that very much. I don't think they would actually support that.
I don't know. This year has been very hard on like my faith in humanity. I mean, these past 3 years have been like a trial in itself. But this year has been very hard. And I think that there's a lot of people that are okay with being racist. I mean, like they don't even have to be like, card carrying, Klans members or whatever group, whatever not sort of racist group you might belong to. I think that they're just okay with it. And they're okay with it. And they don't want to be separated from this. They like the fake history, about the United States and They like the statues because we're really great. And it's not, I think there's a lot of people, we're really split 50-50 right down the middle. And my biggest fear is that we're actually going to have a civil war. And it's not going to be divided on the lines of North and South. It's going to be divided upon, people who like Donald Trump and people who don't, and I hate to say that out loud, but it's how I feel. Like, yeah. But as far as Deandra and Ty, don't feel uncomfortable if you're the only person of color in a room. There's no reason to. Why? You're just as entitled to be anywhere you are. And just know that. I know that sounds easier than said, but you belong where you are. And so it's other people that have to get a little uncomfortable and adjust, because if you're at a school or a job or a party or whatever, you were invited, you work there, whatever, you're paying to be there. So you're entitled. Don't let people try to push you in a box, because it's unnecessary. Yeah, don't let people hold you down, because that's all in your head. Even though it might be outside, you're letting them make you uncomfortable because of what they might think. Who cares what they think? Unless they're like bringing pitchforks and knives, like otherwise you don't have any reason to be that nervous. I mean, that's what I think. So know this, people of the world, I fear no one. I'm never afraid to be in a room be the only one. I've been the only Black person or the only woman in so many rooms. I don't even know. So if I was afraid, I wouldn't do anything. So I'm not afraid. Come at me.
Well, I will bring this back a little bit to the March on Washington, that it's that there were a lot of Jewish people in attendance at the March on Washington, and there was, in fact, some rabbis who spoke at the march. But
do you want to play the clip?
But we could. But I was just going to say that even though you can't always tell by skin tone who is a Jew, it's a common experience for someone who is Jewish to feel other in general society, particularly among other white people, white Christian people, where there's this assumption that everybody is Christian, and then that things that are served for meals they can't eat. Things that are being held on Saturday, which is the Sabbath for Jewish people, they can't attend. There are certain assumptions that are made, and people just don't know, and it's it's a hidden otherness. It's not apparent, which is something that it's apparent with skin color, but I've experienced that in certain communities when I was in college and when I was at work and my first few jobs and things like that, where people just assumed that I would be in certain places and attend certain meetings at certain times and go on certain trips. So you just have to know your place and what you can and cannot do, and stand up for yourself, and be firm about it. And that's it. You don't have to take any guff.
How has the past 3 years of a Trump administration affected the Jewish community?
Oh my goodness. I think it has increased the sense of insecurity for the Jewish community tremendously. American Jews feel much less secure, just as American Muslims feel much less secure in America under Trump. The rise in anti-Semitic hate crimes and Islamophobic hate crimes has risen by I don't know what the statistics are. They've risen by so much that people just don't feel secure. I mean, there was the Tree of Life synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh and the one in Poway in California. People just don't feel safe, and they were hate crimes also by white nationalists. So it's powered by much the same kinds of hatred, hatred of the other, hatred of immigration. The one in Pittsburgh was exactly that. The shooter thought that he was going to the synagogue on the weekend that the synagogue was celebrating an immigration weekend. Okay, that was the reason why he attacked the synagogue. Okay, because there's, a duty to welcome the stranger. And so, exactly for all of those reasons of, hatred of immigrants and Donald Trump's anti-immigrant platform. So it's all very much tied to Trump's hatred of the other, and Jews fall into that camp of the other.
Yeah, Christians have a duty to welcome the stranger also.
Yes, they do.
Somehow it just doesn't matter. No, it's not relevant really for them anymore. Or for many Christians. I won't say all Christians, because there's still some that
there are some. There are many. There are many, but there are many who are questioning what this president is doing, and which Bible it is that he's holding up for a prop, and has he cracked it open?
The answer is no. I'm pretty sure that he's never read a Bible or any other book.
I think he likes the eye for an eye section.
Yeah, but he probably just saw that on a movie. I don't think he ever read a book. Sorry. Sorry to be so mean to our president. Yeah, so let's play this clip. This will uplift us. This is a clip from the March on Washington. It is a Jewish speaker.
Spent some time this week marking the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, and one of the most important speeches in the history of this country. But more than one man articulated a dream that day, even if the power of Martin Luther King overshadowed them. It was the toughest time slot of the day. Never mind having to follow Mahalia Jackson, the queen of gospel.
I wish I could sing.
Rabbi Joachim Prince was the last man up before Martin Luther King.
I was the rabbi of the Jewish community in Berlin under the Hitler regime.
The horrors this rabbi witnessed in Nazi Germany in the 30s compelled him to challenge America in the 60s.
Bigotry and hatred are not the most urgent problems. The most shameful and the most tragic problem is silence.
It was really marvelous to see 250,000 people. Because
Rabbi Israel Dresner, a protege of Prince's, was standing just a few feet away on the podium that day and could feel the power of Prince's message ripple through the crowd.
That really rang a bell because all sorts of clergy in America, you know, they weren't racists, they weren't bigots personally, but they just kept their mouths shut.
As the wise man once said, all it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing.
Exactly, exactly.
Prinz was expelled from Germany in the late 30s and came to Newark, New Jersey,
my friend Rabbi Prinz,
where his congregation welcomed the young Dr. King twice. So there was a direct line between the Holocaust and the American civil rights struggle?
Absolutely. Jews are opposed to injustice. We are opposed to hatred and bigotry and bias and racism and exploitation and so forth. And that's what we're supposed to be opposed to.
America must not become a nation of onlookers.
As he had 3 decades before, Prinz refused to be silent and encouraged all Americans to speak up just as loudly.
America must not remain silent, not merely black America.
Rabbi Joachim Prinz, 50 years ago this week.
Wow. So that teaches us a really good lesson. We all have to stand together. I hope everybody can, we're going to end here soon, but we all have to stand together. That's how we're going to triumph over Trump and his followers and the corruption that he's bringing to us. If we all stand together and fight, every person is valuable, every person matters. It's not just, every person matters in this fight. Your vote is important. Go to votefromabroad.org if you are overseas or living outside the United States, I should say. And go to I Will Vote if you are in the United States and register to vote. Hurry, time is running out. We need you in the fight. And if the only thing that you can do in the fight is vote, then that's what you have to do. You have to vote. Nothing, it's not a big thing to ask. Whatever you're feeling, I don't really like Joe Biden, or I'm not sure. Do you like Trump? Because that's your other choice.
Yeah. Angela, can I just jump in? Like anybody who's feeling like the candidates aren't progressive enough, or Biden isn't for the things that they're for, whatever issue you care about, or set of issues you care about, ask yourself, what is the path to getting to that thing through another Trump presidency? I don't see one, and I haven't heard anybody tell me their theory of how that works. Nobody has a theory for that. In 2016, there was a theory that America would wake up if Trump won, that we might get pushed so far, in that horrible direction that there'd be a strong swing back and we could become progressive. So, okay, that was an argument. You could say that. We're not going to wake up more. We're not going to wake up more when Trump wins again. That's happened. The wake up has happened. People are engaged. People are activists. And if you want Medicare, I'm speaking to the progressives here. You want Medicare for all. You want anti-corruption legislation. You want, the presidential primary process to be different. All those things. Green New Deal. I'm blanking out. We're going to be so far away from those things with another round of so far. And imagine our President Obama was talking about our actual democracy, our actual country is at huge risk. So we won't be fighting for Medicare for all or Green New Deal under Trump. We're going to be facing potentially authoritarianism. We don't know. So, and if you're in a solidly blue state, boy, this is hard to say, but bumping up those popular vote numbers are going to matter. It's really going to matter, because Trump is already saying on Monday, he said at his convention, that the only way the Democrats can win is by cheating. Think about, I mean,
Wow.
so 3 million isn't going to be enough, right? 3 million, like Hillary's 3 million isn't going to be enough for him, for them. It's going to have to be. So there is no, I don't see an argument for voting any other party. And, you know, that's not how I would feel in other elections. I see a role for, you know, pushing the Democratic Party left and all that stuff. But this time, and I'm not alone. A lot of respected progressive leaders and commentators are saying the same.
I echo what Sue is saying, that we can't afford another 4 years of Trump. We will be down the road to authoritarianism, and his fascist tendencies will be in full force, and we will not recognize our country.
And don't trust the poll. And don't trust the polls. I would not be at all surprised if Trump supporters are saying they're voting Biden. I don't think the polls are helpful information to us.
Yes. Ty, you were going to say something?
Yeah, there's some construction going on in my building, and I hope it's not too loud. But I was just going to say, as a Sanders delegate, like, I'm listening to people like Noam Chomsky and like Angela Davis, who are also saying like, this is, yeah, sorry, the construction has me kind of like, I lost my train of thought. Reducing risk reduction, yes. Strategy, yes. So reducing the risk for those most vulnerable in our community, and that's not enough. Are you really like a leftist? Are you really a Bernie Sanders supporter? If you're not protecting the most vulnerable, and also for those that are like who think like voting for a different party or withholding their vote will push the Democratic Party in some way. When has that ever worked? When? I think if anything, the establishment, if you will, would become more right-leaning if Trump were to win another term, as opposed to listening to the left. Like, that makes no sense to me. So yeah, harm reduction, that's kind of what I was thinking of. You have to think about harm reduction in this way. And I meant what I said my first time speaking a little bit earlier, like, I think it's time for another march. I was reading something by a political scientist, Erica Chenoweth. She's done some research into non-violent revolutions. When she was, I think, getting her master's, she thought that, which was, I think, maybe the thought at the time, that violent revolution was the only way that change is brought through. And she spoke at a conference. She did a research. There's a TED Talk video you should look up. Erica Chenoweth TED Talk. You'll find it, where she talks about going to a conference and realizing that nobody's actually done the research. They've never done the research to determine nonviolent versus peaceful, which is more effective. And it's like with nonviolent, or with violent, you need maybe about only 5% of the population, maybe closer to 8 or 9 in some places. It's kind of up in the air. But for nonviolent, you actually only need 3%. If you have a nonviolent protest and you have 3.5% of the population participating in that, that's enough to get change. And so I say all that just to mention that, like, that's 10 million people in the U.S. How many were at the March on Washington? 25 million. So it should be more than possible to get some kind of sustained movement to really push President Biden on these issues. Yeah. So if you consider yourself, you know, a real person for the people, a Bernie-crat, leftist, whatever you want to say, you will support the candidate that is more likely to move on these issues, and then you will take that action to help move on those issues. We will organize. That's what's needed right now. Organization, not kind of a despondent, nothing matters, so I won't throw my vote away. So that's all I have to say on that.
Thank you for saying that. Seriously, there's so many people, I hear it everywhere. Like, I'm not voting for Biden because of X reason or Y reason. And just like, what are you doing then? You know, because most of the people that say that, and I'm going to generalize a little bit, but they aren't actually working on any movement to change things. They're just on Facebook or whatever, writing it down. And it's a little bit unfair because there are a lot of people that are disabled, unemployed, ill, that need our help, or the children in the cages. Remember those guys, or the ones that were taken away from their families, you know, that we don't even know where they are. Those people need our help.
Absolutely.
And all it takes is you voting to help them. You know, I mean, really, there's so many things that, I mean, it's the 100th anniversary of the women's right to vote.
White women's right to vote.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say.
white women's
only
right
a
to
small
vote.
percentage, though.
Well, there were some Black women that got the right to vote at that time too. It just wasn't everyone. So
It wasn't universal suffrage.
yeah, it wasn't universal suffrage, but we've never had universal suffrage. We don't have it now. So, I mean, really, if you
We're
can,
still working on
disenfranchise
making. We're still working on living up to our creed.
Yes, for sure. So I think we should end here. I'm sorry we took so long, but and when I got on this call with you guys, I said I felt really bad, but I feel better just hearing you all. I know that's not your job to make me feel better, but
I'm glad that we did.
Yeah, I just, you know, the level we need. Oh yeah, you know what else we need? We need gun control. Yeah,
absolutely. Amen. Amen.
I don't think, you know, the 17-year-old boy, he wasn't even old enough to buy that gun. Somebody bought it for him, his parents.
His mother was at the rally with him. You know that, right?
I knew that she drove him there. I know she drove him there. I didn't realize she was there. Oh my God.
His mother, he and his mother attended the Trump rally.
Yeah. Okay.
Angela, thank you so much for organizing
Yes, thank
this.
you. Thank you.
And I'm glad you feel better because we need you strong in the fight.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess you don't need me weeping in a corner.
But you're allowed to weep in a corner. You get to be human because we all are.
Emotions don't make you weak.
No.
It's normal to emote.
And remember, this is a marathon. This is a marathon. This is not a sprint.
Well, for the moment, it's a sprint.
It's a sprint until November 3rd,
right
guys.
Now, we're in a sprint right now for the last period, but this has been a marathon.
68 days or whatever. Yeah, but it's definitely been a marathon. Please join me on Sunday when we speak with Christian Piccolini. He is a former racist, white supremacist, who is now working on anti-racism work. He had a TED Talk that you can watch. Just Google Ted and Christian Piccolini. But you can do better than that. You can come and ask him questions. We're going to have him on Sunday at 4 p.m. Central European time, Central European summertime. It should be really interesting. And it's one of our final Fighting White Supremacy series events. So don't miss this one. It's going to be really great. You can RSVP for this event. The event is in the header of the post. Just click the event link and join. It should be pretty interesting. Don't miss it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Deandra. Thank you, Ty. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, everybody who stayed and watched this. I really appreciate you all joining me. Everybody stay strong. And it's okay to cry sometimes, I've heard.
It relieves something. I don't know what, but always feels a little bit better after.
Yeah.
And make sure to request your ballot from votefromabroad.org. Everybody who's still watching, And encourage your friends. I've done that to so many Americans that are living abroad, and they're like, oh shit, yeah, I got to get on that. So
Yes,
also encourage
definitely.
friends that don't even live near you, but you still have WhatsApp or Instagram or whatever. Just say, hey, did you request your ballot? So
And friends who aren't American, they can pass along to
yeah,
even their
That's right.
non-American friends and get them, everyone to share. It's an
Yes.
election for the world.
All of these things, the links are all in the header of this post that you're looking at. Votefromabroad.org, iwillvote.com if you're in the States. If you want to join us, if you want to join one of our caucuses, if you want to attend some of our events, it's all there. Just go there and we'll see you. I won't see anybody again till Sunday online, hopefully. So have a great weekend and everybody stay strong.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.